Hi everybody and welcome back to another Emory Security YouTube video. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the web challenges on the PerfectRoot CTF. So this challenge was called RTFM and it says it's up to you to find the flag. We have a connection info as well as the public.zip. I've already gone and extracted this on over to our VS Code, which we will take out the code in just a second. But let's take a look at what we have going on. We can see here that we do have a login page with a registration. So as always, let's just put in some random data here. And let's log in. And it looks like my password didn't work. So let's try something different. There we go. So now if we go on over to it and then we do the password, we are now logged in as Emory Security with a manual URL. Now, whenever you see a URL, chances are that you're going to be dealing with server-side request forgery, or SSRF for short, which essentially just means you can access either internal files or internal services and essentially enumerate everything on the back end. Now, before we start diving into it, let's take a look at the code and see what exactly is going on. So let's head on over to the top here. And we can see that it begins with a Flask application, and the secret is going to be something completely random in production. Obviously, you can upload the Docker file and you already know the secret key, but because we're trying to get the production environment to work, this is completely nullified. Now, if this was the same security key, we can use it and try to forge the web tokens that are within this specific application, but that is not the way to do this challenge. Looking at it, it just creates an opt manual files directory, and within SQLite, it just creates some of the tables that you need for this instance to spin up. Here we just have a couple checks just to make sure that the user exists and just getting the standard user and all that fun stuff. We can see, however, that when you do insert the user, it also comes with an is admin. So this is being set to either 0 or 1 or true or false. If it's at 0, that means that it's not going to be active. If it's 1, that means that it is true and that user is an administrator. We can also make an administrator, which should be pretty interesting. And it just basically updates that user to is admin equals 1, which I just said here a second ago. So looking at it, we can see that there are a few blocked hosts and there are some safe URLs. So it does verify that we cannot access any internal services on any sort of the local host. However, there are ways to go about bypassing this, which I may be able to show you here in just a minute, as well as we can look at some of the download manual. So it looks like it's grabbing a local file from it, and then it is chunking it together and then basically giving us that said file. We do have that registration page that I was mentioning earlier, and there's no mass assignment vulnerability where we can also add is admin into the registration to become an administrator. Just not possible because it is only getting these two parameters from the request that we made when we go to API register. So not really going to be able to do too much there, but let's continue and see what else there is. We can see there is a login and they are using SHA-256 as their hashing format. And we can see that it does say success is true, logged in, as well as it does store the is admin inside of your session. So if you were to have a very weak JWT format within the Flask sessions, if you crack it using Flask unsign, you will be able to modify this value to say true or 1, whatever the deal is, and then you can put it back into the application, which in return, you basically privilege escalate yourself. This is a real world vulnerability and I have seen it before. So we do have that logout functionality, which just essentially clears our sessions. We have the profile just to see who we are as a user. We see it, we have an add admin, which is a GET request, and all it takes is a username. And what that's doing is it's going to be making that user, and it'll essentially say true if you put in a valid username. The API download is to strip whatever we try to request back at us. So we essentially download the file that we're trying to retrieve from the specific backend, but we may not even need that because we did just see this specific URL. Now, there is no wrappers in place. And what I mean by wrappers is whenever you're dealing with Flask, you have the ability to create middleware. And what this middleware does is before you can actually access this endpoint, it checks to see if you have specific roles or specific permissions to view this endpoint. Now, most of the time when you're on Flask, it's going to look something like, let's say, this, and then something like wrapper. It could be anything you want, but for the most part, it would say something along the lines of authorization, just to ensure that you are the user that you say you are. I believe you can also put it inside of the route, if I'm not mistaken. This does not have any authorization protections in place, so this is probably going to be the way into it. We can quickly take a look and glance through other stuff. So we have the view for the file name. We can see here that we can view different files depending on if the file name is valid. We also have an admin dashboard where we have the username and it checks it to see if the user is A, valid, and B, if that user does have admin permissions, as we could see here. And then if it does, we will then be able to retrieve the flag. That being said, let's jump into our way of doing it, which is looking at the add admin endpoint. So we'll head on over here. We can see that it says add admin and it's just a GET request. So we'll do add admin and we'll see what comes back. And we can see invalid username. Now, because we already know that it does need to provide a username inside, we could just type in Emory Security, since that is our username, and we can see that the user was updated successfully. So we could try to go back over to this page, see if anything changed, and it looks like it doesn't. But again, if we do recall, if you scroll down just a little bit, we can see that there is that admin/dashboard in a get method. So again, we're just going to do /admin/dashboard. And you're going to notice that we do retrieve the flag, and it is a MD5 hash with R00T in front of it. And this is the flag for this challenge. Now, something that I do want to quickly mention here is I don't think this was the intended way. And if it was, then kudos to the developer for making all these different endpoints and making all this different functionality for it to be such an easy challenge. However, it's very important that we have proper security controls in place because we never want this to happen in a production environment. You never want a standard user to be able to access administrator level permissions. So having some form of middleware in place is definitely advised and appropriate in this instance. If you did enjoy this video, please let me know in the comment section down below. And please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.